I'm going to help you identify key signs that might be holding you back in your relationship. And I'll share simple tips to help you increase the quality of relationships that you get into in the future by making one simple shift. Now, regardless of how you look at it, effective communication is the backbone of any relationship. It's the foundation upon which trust, intimacy, and understanding are built. And without it, even the strongest of relationships can crumble under the weight of misunderstandings and unresolved conflicts. But what happens when we struggle to communicate effectively? When our words, tone, and body language fall short of conveying our true intentions and feelings. You see, what happens is when we fail to communicate effectively, misunderstandings arise. Assumptions are created and conclusions are drawn from simple yet sometimes direct statements that may trigger your partner or may make them perceive a certain situation as something way beyond what it's supposed to be. I mean, at the end of the day, we assume the worst. We jump to conclusions, and before we know it, a small issue becomes a major problem. And then it's usually at this point where defensiveness sets in and the emotions escalate. We start to feel unheard, unloved, and unvalued. And this is a vicious cycle that most often will leave you feeling frustrated, anxious, and even disconnected from your partner. So normally a lack of communication or effective communication leads to a ripple effect, which hurts the relationship by breaking trust, which in return causes a lack of intimacy in your relationship and it builds resentment between you and your partner. And usually around this point, you start to question whether or not your partner truly cares about you. It leads to either you or your partner doubting your worth and even the future of your relationship. And this is what leads to the demise and the catastrophe of relationships in general. And unhealthy patterns in communication can lead to toxicity in a relationship, turning a once healthy relationship into an unhealthy burden. So now the question is, what are the 7 signs that might indicate you're struggling with communication in your relationship? Let's dive in and explore each one in detail. Here's the first sign. The first sign is you find yourself feeling frustrated and resentful after a conversation with your partner. Sometimes what ends up happening is you might feel misunderstood, you might feel unheard, you might feel like your partner is dismissing your feelings. So because of that, you'll tend to close off. The biggest reason why you tend to close off is because of the fact that you feel as though you're not being heard or understood. But then you have to ask yourself, are you communicating properly? Is the message that you're trying to convey coming off properly? If your partner were to be saying the things that you're saying to them, but to you, would you perceive it the same way you're expecting your partner to perceive your message? Because often we may think that we have good intentions at hand when it comes to the way we deliver our conversation or begin the process of communication when a problem arises. But what we fail to realize is a lot of times our idea of effective communication usually starts with placing blame on another person, which if it's your first time communicating about a certain issue at hand, automatically builds up defensiveness. So that's why defensiveness and blame builds up walls between you and your partner. And it's because of the simple fact that when you don't walk into a situation where you and your partner can collaborate on an issue to find a solution for the problem, then it's very hard to find a common ground, but most importantly, very hard to find any area in which you guys can grow and develop wherever a problem arises or wherever a problem lies in the time being. So then that leads you to resent your partner, and because you think that your partner truly doesn't care about you, you think your partner truly doesn't love you, but in reality your partner just doesn't understand what you're trying to say or the message you're trying to convey because they took it a different way. And this is where it's important to make sure that you and your partner are on the same terms when it comes to communicating and valuing communication. Because if you and your partner don't value the same things, then it's very hard to even, one, maintain a bond, and two, get problems solved efficiently. Because if you're open to communication, but your partner hates it because they hate being accountable, then what's the point of even trying? What's the point of staying in a relationship with somebody that's not willing to put forth the same amount of effort as you are? What's the point of staying in a relationship with somebody that you have to tell them how to talk to you? You have to tell them how to treat you. You have to tell them how to treat your friends and family. You're not somebody's mother. You're not somebody's parent. You shouldn't have to discipline somebody or teach your significant other how to treat you or how to behave around you. They should automatically know how to do it. Your partner should automatically value you. Your partner should value you enough to know that their actions and their words could potentially hurt you. But if you're constantly finding yourself having to tell your partner over and over again how to act and how to treat you and how to act around other people, then normally the best thing to do is step outside of your relationship and reevaluate things, whether or not you and your partner are even compatible with one another. But what most people do is they stay because they convince themselves that there's a chance that this is going to change in the future, or, oh, all I got to do is stick it through. He's a lost soul. He's had a bunch of past relationships that's failed. It's maybe just his trauma. It's not his trauma. It's his standards, and you're lowering your standards in order to keep up with the person that you're in a relationship with. It makes no sense, and all it's going to do is hurt you in the long run, especially at the end of the relationship when you realize all you did was waste time. The second sign of this is that you tend to avoid conversations altogether. You and your partner do, or maybe just you do, and that's mostly because you fear conflict or you fear confrontation arising from even bringing up a problem at hand, even if you feel some type of way about it and you want it to be heard. What you'll notice most of the times is you'll try to brush off certain issues. You'll try to sweep them under the rug, hoping that for some reason, somehow they're magically just going to resolve itself. But this rarely ever happens, unfortunately, and all it does is pile on and stack on top of one another until eventually the weight becomes too much for you and your partner to carry, and your relationship ultimately crumbles because of the failure to communicate and address the issues as they come, but rather deciding to put them to the side, thinking it's just going to go away. They never do go away. They temporarily get covered up, but eventually somebody's going to lift that cover, and all of your problems will be exposed. And you will realize that what you thought was no longer there, what you thought was no longer a problem, is still very much a problem. The third sign is that you struggle to express your feelings and your needs in an assertive manner. Let me tell you what I mean by this. Often you might come across as passive-aggressive, or overly defensive, which leads to misunderstandings and conflict in your relationship. Again, communicating is important. Knowing what you want to resolve is also important, but knowing how you're going to sound and your tonality when you approach it is vitally important. The way you present a problem that you're trying to solve will determine the reaction from your partner. So your tonality is just as important as the topic at hand and as the problem that you're looking to resolve. The fourth sign is that you're prone to misinterpreting your partner's words, tone, and body language. You might read between the lines, assume the worst, or jump to conclusions, which in return leads to unnecessary conflict and drama. The fifth sign is you have trouble listening empathetically, often interrupting or dismissing your partner's concerns. And this is a huge problem. Matter of fact, this is a huge problem with majority of people watching this right now. You might be so caught up in your own emotions that you fail to truly hear and understand your partner's perspective. If you are in a relationship where you'll notice that you try to communicate with your partner or talk to them about how you feel, and every single time you feel as though you have a chance to express yourself, your partner cuts you off and never gives you the opportunity to speak, then this is likely the case. There is no point in you staying in a relationship with somebody that doesn't want you to be heard or that doesn't care about your emotions and your feelings. There's no point in you staying in a relationship where you feel like you're not being heard, where you feel like your opinion or your feelings don't matter as much as your partner's does. If you find yourself constantly having to cave into your partner's emotional state and to nurture them or make them feel good, but then when it comes to your own feelings, you're left to deal with them on your own, then all you are is somebody's emotional support. But when it comes to yourself, you have nothing, you have nobody for you. So this is where you have to kind of distinguish between the relationship you're in versus the relationship you think you're in. Because a lot of times, the reason I say that is it's important to distinguish between the relationship you're actually in and the relationship you think you're in. Because a lot of times we think we're in a relationship that's better than what it actually is. But then reality sets in and we realize that the partner that we're not with them because of how they are. We're with them because of the idea of who they could be. And normally when you hold on to a relationship over the idea of what somebody could be, you end up hurting yourself in the long run. What's the point of staying in a relationship where you feel unheard, you feel misunderstood, or you feel like your emotional needs are constantly being neglected, but you're super quick to console your partner, to wrap your arms around them and reassure them that they're being heard and understood. But when the situations flip and now it's your turn to receive that same nurturing, your partner could care less about your emotional state. It's always about them, but it's never about you. what's the point of staying in a relationship like that? At the end of the day, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you find yourself constantly having to change who you are to fit the image of what they want, then there's no point in holding on. All you're doing is you're holding on to an idea, and that's the trap that most people find themselves in when it comes to relationships, is they hold on to this idea. And the more you hold on to this idea, the more you realize that it's far beyond reach. And now the sixth sign is that you often feel like you're walking on eggshells around your partner because you never know when they're going to blow up or become defensive. You might feel like you're trying to avoid conflict or protect your partner's emotional state rather than having an open and honest conversation. And a lot of this stems from fearing that your partner is going to react in a certain way because maybe they have in the past. And the seventh sign is that you struggle to apologize or acknowledge your mistakes because you fear being vulnerable or being perceived as someone who is weak. But out of all these signs, there is one that can impact your relationship the most. And that is the inability to listen actively and empathetically. Because when we fail to truly hear our partner and understand their concerns, we create an environment of disconnect and mistrust. You start to feel like you're living in separate worlds rather than sharing a life together. So take a step back and reflect on your own communication in your relationship and ask yourself if you're guilty of any of these 7 signs. Also remember that effective communication is a skill that can be developed and learned over time. It's not something you're born with. So if you tell yourself, oh, it's just not how I am. Oh, I've always been this way. Oh, I just can't change who I am. You could change. It requires a lot of effort, and maybe that's why you decide not to do it, but it's very much possible, and you owe it to yourself. And most importantly, if you truly care about your relationship, you owe it to your partner. Because at the end of the day, effective communication is the key to unlocking deeper connections, resolving conflicts, and building stronger relationships. And remember, it's not about being perfect in your relationship. It's about being willing to grow, learn, and adapt together as a couple. Now, if you're struggling with communication in your relationship, I encourage you to share your experience. Share what's worked for you, or share what you've struggled with the most in your relationship within communicating, whether it's you or even your partner's reactions. Drop those down in a comment below. And if you want to learn more about improving your communication skills, I encourage you to check out our other videos on our channel. Most importantly, check out the ones that will pop up as suggested after this video is over. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.